So top level stuff. When you want to create length, you want to streamline and narrow. When you want to shorten, you widen things. So as a petite, often what we're looking to do is to create length through our body. And we want to bring the focus up to our face. So you're looking for things that are really quite streamlined. And it doesn't necessarily mean that something has to be deeper or darker in color. That's one way of doing it. But having things that are streamlined in shape, straighter, narrower, and a few other details I'm going to show you in just a moment, they will create length through your body. So these sort of ideas on the left-hand side, these examples on the left-hand side of the screen, these are the things that are going to create that length through the body. So even with this jumper having those horizontal details there, because it's quite streamlined, it's semi-fitted, it doesn't have a lot of volume to the sleeve and things like that, that's still streamlined enough. So you're really looking at those items that are fitted to semi-fitted, and then that creates that narrow and lengthening line through there. So that's one of the key things in terms of what you should be looking for if you're trying to create that length. When you add width to anything or volume, then it actually will shorten you, and it will shorten different parts of the body or the whole body. So this is just on the right hand side, giving you some examples of things that will create that width and therefore shorten. And I guess especially if we're looking at the bottom half, or in particular if we're perhaps short-legged, then adding that volume around the bottom half of the legs, or when we're going for super wide legs, and then we can see we've also got that check print there, which is a focal point, then what will happen is when we add that width, it shortens that part of the body. So even if we look at this dress here, because we're adding width up the top and down the bottom, overall that will shorten our look overall. So they're sort of top level things. If we can remember that, a lot of the other stuff will fall into place. The other thing that will impact on dressing for a petite is the length of things. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't wear longer line items like long dresses, long skirts and things like that. If you remember that anything that is narrower lengthens and anything that is wider shortens. So you can still absolutely do those. You just need to go super streamlined, and in some instances go darker as well down the bottom. But some ways to help you create that length through the leg and also through the body is to maintain proportion by going shorter with skirts, dresses, and also jackets and tops. So you've got a few examples here. And again, you can see it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go lighter in the color. It's actually more about maintaining that proportion. And I think it was really good in terms of, if you haven't seen in the Facebook group, Monica put up a post about two different navy skirts. One was above the knee, one was just below the knee. And it was really interesting in looking from a proportion point of view, looking at how the shorter one looked more in proportion than the longer one. However, we did talk about the fact that if you taper in and streamline the longer skirt, then that would also enhance or create those proportions too. So it's understanding that it's about narrowing and then also about the length as well. The next thing that you want to look at in terms of creating that length through the body and making us appear longer and leaner is around columns of color. And I know, Sue, we often talk about this one for you. And columns of color can be done in a few ways. It's not necessarily going with one color block, and it doesn't mean that you only wear dark colors either. Columns of color create that continuous line and create that length through the body. So you can do it as one block color, as it is here for Jada, or you can do what we call up inside, which is this middle one here. And you can see you don't even have to match in terms of the color. It's very similar, but we're creating that length through the body up on the inside. And so what we're creating there is what we call the inverted triangle shape, because we're adding that lighter or brighter color on the outside there. So that's another way of creating that column of color, bringing the focus back up to the top of the body, to the face where the communication zone is, and then very much bringing that focus up makes us look longer and leaner. But the other way you can do it as well with a column of color is also by going up outside. So putting a different color in a, say, a top as a layering piece and having the rest of that color on the outside as well. So that generally will either create a rectangle shape or an hourglass shape, similar with that one solid color through all of that as well. Barb's just wondering, do those shoes shorten her? Well, actually, if you think about it, Barb, the color up the top is a focal point. The shoe down the bottom is also a focal point. So she's balancing it out. If she was just going for the shoe, that's such a good question, Barb. If she was just going for the shoe down the bottom, then what would happen is the focal point would just go down. And it's similar to this one with the yellow here as well, going with the black shoe, but then she's also got the black face mask on as well. And I just wanted to point out with Jada as well, even though she's got that color focal point in the shoe below, she does have another focal point, even though it's not color, up the top, and that is in that sleeve. So again, the eye goes down, but it comes back to something interesting up the top half as well. So as a petite or someone who still wants to create that length through the body, or these are actually fabulous rules as well for anyone who's a triangle shape. If you want to bring the focus down, you can still do that. You just have to bring it back up to create that balanced focal point, which is what we're going to talk about. I think it's either next or the one after. Let me have a look. Yeah, you beat me to it in terms of focal points. So as petite, or even as a triangle, anyone who wants to create length through their body, it is important that you also use focal points as a way of doing that. So for most of us to create length through the body, we want the focal point to be up the top near our face. And so a lot of us will do that anyway in terms of print and pattern, earrings, maybe a bold lip, jewelry, so many different ways that we can do that. So focal point up the top automatically lengthens. Another focal point that people often choose is around the waist. That's not necessarily going to create that length through the body. So again, it's choosing whether or not to go with that. What will help as well, if you are someone who, again, loves, focal points down the bottom half of your body because you love shoes or you love some detailing on a skirt or pants and things like that, then again, it's about bringing the focus up. If you're a petite or a triangle and you're trying to create that length, what you do want to avoid is just having the focal point down the bottom half of the body. Because if you do that, then what happens is it draws attention down, and anywhere we draw down makes us appear shorter and then wider. So focal points that we want to focus on for our petites is really anything from the bust up, or if you do want to bring the focus down, you need to bring it back up again by balancing it out the top. Can I just say I really enjoyed doing these ones, so thank you for asking these questions. So another really awesome trick in terms of creating that length through the body is vertical lines. So vertical lines, as we've mentioned before, and you can find more details on this in the step 2 of the video course, they can be absolutely stripes, but it's also embellishments and detailing. So you can see, the split in the center of the skirt, having those lapels and straight lines where you can layer underneath and create that column of color. It's, button detailing, it can be, pockets, anything like that. Pleating will create those vertical lines. So vertical lines, again, will draw the eye up and create that length through the body there. And second best to that, again, is diagonal lines, because often diagonal lines will bring our eye up as well. And it also disrupts those straighter horizontal lines that create width. So if you are looking at, adding some interest, or, especially if you've got tops and things like that are very straight hemmed, then, doing the magic tucks, asymmetrical tucks and things like that will really help disrupt that line and create length through the body. So saying, what height or what size is petite? So height-wise in ours is around the sort of under 155 centimeters. 157 centimeters is considered petite. However, any of these, I guess, tips really work for anyone who wants to create length through their body. And that in particular also very much works for someone who is a triangle shape as well. It's the same sort of theory and rules around that. But also just in relation to that, some of these rules and I guess tips and tools are in place because for many of us, we don't necessarily want to wear a heel. And so that's one of the things that we want to think about as well, is that, you know, if we're short-legged or we're a triangle or we're petite, you know, often wearing a heel will make a huge difference in terms of the length that we create with our body. But if you don't want to wear a heel, then it's taking these tips and tools into play and working with those as well. That's another tip that I have in terms of petites. Is that the same for someone with a short body and long legs? Well, if you've got long legs, what you often want to do is you want to actually make your legs appear shorter and your body appear longer. So you want to even up the torso, so hip to head to hip to floor. So often what you might want to do is create more volume around the bottom half of your body to make it look more in proportion, or you wear longer tops and things like that as well to make your top half appear the same size as your bottom half as well. So that's just a little tip there. In terms of shoes, if you are going to wear flat shoes, which many of us will do, and I know a lot of people avoid wearing dresses and things like that with flat shoes, it's actually about just having that tapering or wearing a neutral shoe or something similar in color to maybe the pant or stocking that you're wearing to create that length and line through there as well.